Hi, I'm Boone. This is Boone's Slot Car Garage. And tonight we're going to build ourselves a billboard. But not any billboard, right? So let's go to Bob real quick. And Bob made some modifications to Bob. So Bob's sporting a slot car body now instead of a squirrel. But he's holding the billboard that we're going to be building tonight. And the billboard's the AGIP billboard. But we're going to build the billboard that was in Monza back in 1970 to 73. And it's a little bit different than just a regular billboard. See, back in Monza during that time, a bunch of wild and crazy Italians decided it'd be a really good idea to climb up inside the billboard. And when they got up high enough, they were going to kick out some of the panels and create holes in the billboard so they could see the race better. So, good idea, right? Well, some guys turned around and took some photos of those guys up on this billboard. And those pictures have turned into pretty much a historic event during that time era. And that is the billboard that we're going to build tonight. So let's do this. Okay, so let's go through some of the supplies we're going to need for this. First off, we're going to need ourselves our main artwork for our sign. Now this, I went ahead and went into images on the computer and just printed out a couple copies. Now, I always like to print out more than one just because we mess one up, we have a backup. So I have 2 copies of this, and I went ahead and printed out pretty much on the full sheet of paper. So 2 of those. Need ourselves some writing utensils just so we can make some marks here and there. A couple different measuring items. We need a ruler, a square, and I have a depth gauge here, and these work pretty good for just real easy. I mean, you can lay it on there, get some fast measurements. So if you have one of these, great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, but they work pretty cool. A pair of tweezers. We need a paintbrush and different types of cutting utensils. I went ahead and used a razor knife and X-Acto, scissors, miniature hacksaw blade, and we're gonna need some PVA glue. I'm gonna go ahead and use some matte Mod Podge and some gel super glue and the Gorilla. Then we're gonna need an oil. So I'm going to use a Danish oil. This is a dark walnut. And when we get to that point, you'll see why. And the other thing that we're going to need is a type of primer or some type of enamel that we can apply on the wood to block. And what we're trying to block is we're going to block the oil from penetrating all the way through. So this works great. It's the Kills Premium. If you have some of that, great. If you don't, you can use, again, like an enamel or something of the sort that's going to make a real nice solid barrier on your wood. When we get to the wood, we're going to go ahead and use some balsa. It's all going to be out of balsa. This stuff is 3/32 by 6 inch, and this came in a 36-inch long panel. So need some of that. Some doweling, and this I believe is 1/4 inch dowel. We need square stock 1/4 inch dowel, and then I'm using a variety of different types of plank style balsa and just different varieties of it, and that is going to be for the inner structure of the billboard itself. So when we come back, we'll start slicing and dicing. Right. So we have our panel or our billboard, and this is on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So if we keep that concept and we take our 6-inch balsa that we have and slice it down, I went ahead and sliced this down to roughly about 17 inches. Now this gives me a little bit of play on the end, but if we do that, that way I can slice it off, compensate for cut and everything else, and it'll work. Now, on the back side of this, and that's where the Kills primer came in, I went ahead and coated the whole entire back side of this with Kills. And the reason for that is that we're making a barrier, because when we go and we put the Danish oil on it, it's going to want to penetrate through the wood, and this will help seal it so that it won't go all the way down, and when our billboard is on there, it won't, bleed through on our paper. So that is the reason for our primer. Now, what I'm going to do is went ahead and I sliced this off, and the idea is that I'm going to go ahead and slice it down here and take the other panel and put down below, and then just cut off my excess. So when we come back, I'm going to go ahead and have this all cut, and we'll finish it off. Okay, so now I've sliced my board in half, and what we have now is that I need to go ahead and trim off the little bit around the outside of this. So then we set it on here, we can find out exactly how much excess we have that we need to chop off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this out with my scissors, the white that's on here, and then we come back, we'll get this placed down and figure out exactly where we need to slice this off at. All right, so I went ahead and I cut off the little bit of excess that was on our piece of paper here. Now, went ahead and I placed it down. Now, when you a lot of times when you paint on balsa, it'll distort, okay, especially on the panels. So what I'm needing to do is get this set down and underneath there, just so, make sure you're lined up on one side. So what I've done is I've moved my piece of paper to this side over here and also to the top. That way I have a perimeter down on this one side, on these two sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my pen while I hold this down, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark a little bit on each one. And down, let me hold that, get that. Now on the bottom side, while still applying pressure, we'll just make a couple marks so we can go ahead and cut this off. There we go. So take this guy off, we got our few little marks. So now what we need to do is just take your trusty ruler or a straight edge of some sort and connect the dots, and just go ahead and cut that all off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scribe this all out, get this trimmed off the rest of the way. When we come back, we'll take it from there. So at this point, we want to find out where our post locations are going to be out on the back side of the billboard. So what I've done is I went ahead and put out some reference points measured out, and I went ahead and compensated for the 1/4 inch square dowel that we're using on the edges on both sides, and then measured in 2.5 inches to each point. And what that does is give a nice equal grid coming all the way down through. I've then went ahead and carried out different points at those measure points throughout our panel. And when we set this down on the table and line it all up, I went ahead and took some of our square dowel balsa, and if we go ahead and we lay that right on that edge, it's going to give us a little bit down on the bottom. And the pictures that I noticed with this billboard is that it actually sat up off the ground quite a ways. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take these guys, and I sliced them down to, I'm going to slice them down to 1 foot, so at 12 inches. And that will give me 1 inch over here on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut all my square balsa dowel at 12 inches, and I'll need 4 of them for each post. And we come back, we'll start gluing those down. Alrighty, so I have our square dowel all cut at 1 foot or 12 inches. And to get our bow out of this, you want to go ahead and set it on, a flat table or platform, and then take your dowel, and what we're going to do is we're going to super glue it right down. And what you want to do is hold it into place while it dries, and then that will help start taking that warp out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm only going to do one portion at a time. That way I don't have to, sit there and worry about two. It's a lot easier if you just do it systematically. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of super glue on that, and then just put a dab here and there. You don't have to do a constant bead, just a couple dabs will do you. I'll set that off there. Line this guy right up on the edge. And move that down. Get that right there. And then we'll just hold it into place. And nice thing about balsa is that it dries real fast with this stuff. I think it's the pores, the super glue goes right in and bites right away. So just apply some pretty good pressure to it, and looks like it's going to need a little bit more, but you get the idea how it's going to go right together. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get the rest of my dowels down. The next dowel I'm going to do after this guy dries is on the opposite side, and then I'll go ahead and do my centers, and then I'll put this guy in and kind of repeat the same procedure. So when we come back, I'll have both sides done, and then we'll go ahead and apply the bottom side. So we have this glued on both sides now. You can see how it's taken that warp out of that balsa. So now what we have is our lower piece, and all we need to do is just go ahead and glue it back in there and do the same procedure that we did with the top, and just glue it into that. And then once we have it to that point, we'll go ahead and start gluing in our other pieces on our other scribe lines, and that'll give us a nice grid on the back side that we can start building off of. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this lower guy on, and we come back, we'll start applying these two other to the back side. So we went ahead and I've got the other side in this lower, it's all glued on. So now we just have these last two, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and set them down here just like this. So it's going to have pretty good spacing all the way through. So at this point, take a visual picture and make sure you know on what side of the dot or anything else that you're going to glue, because it's real easy to take them off and then come back and go, oh man, so you guess, and then it's on the wrong side. So what I like to do is get everything placed first, and then take your dowel and just move it to the inside. So if we're going to go to the inside of those dots, move it to the inside. If it's on the other side and it's the outside of those dots, move it to the outside. So it just, any little thing to help you out. I mean, it just, your brain starts going different directions, and it helps to any little trick, right? So what I'm going to do is put my dots in here, and we'll put that guy right in the middle, and this guy right in the middle of those two. Now if you wanted to, you could take a pencil or something and connect them all so you had a line to work off of, but I'm just kind of doing it freehand. And get that, hold this. And there we go. We got another post down. So I'll go ahead and let this guy dry. I'll go ahead and glue that one down. When we come back, we'll start laying out some of the inner structure on the back side. Okay, so got that all glued on there. Now, go ahead and take your ruler, and what I'm doing is I'm measuring down 1.5 inches and I'm putting a mark. So at every 1.5 inches, I'm putting a mark down. Okay, and what that's going to be for is the spacing for our cross boards that can go on. And I went ahead and duplicated that over on the other side. Every 1.5 inches, make a mark. So you take your ruler and line it up on both sides so you have an edge. Now we take our other balsa here, our flat stocked, and what you can do is then utilize this as your straight edge to go ahead and get your, so when you lay it down, it's all nice and straight. So I'm going to do, so you can go ahead and cut this and then glue that in. When we come back, show you how it's put in there. So we're going to go ahead and do one line here. And what I have is the one where the seam is between the two panels. So you go ahead and take your piece of balsa and you got it right down here. So what we want to do is go ahead and slice it right there. Just go ahead and scribe a line and then go ahead and cut this through. The blade's getting a little bit dull, but yeah, it's working good enough for this. Now remember I was telling you about the ruler. So go ahead and set the ruler down in here and get it kind of lined up. And this, works good because it's giving you an access point to work off of. So go ahead and take your super glue and put a couple dots right in there. And then take this one and we just want to go ahead and put it right between. And then I'll just go ahead and carry that same process all the way over to the other side. Now that we have our grid all done on the back side and our cross supports, I think I might go ahead and just put a last little guy on both sides down here at the bottom. A lot of times on the older billboards, it had just a cross piece to hold the legs together. All the pictures that I found for this exact billboard had a bunch of people standing down at the bottom, but you could tell it was off the ground and it did look like it had something across there. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this little bit of flat stock that I have and just make one on both sides right there. So we come back, we'll have that complete, and then we'll go ahead and apply our insignia onto the surface. Okay, at this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit of sandpaper. I went and got that little bit of cross brace down there, and it's kind of nice. It gives it just a little bit of a finishing touch down there at the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and take some sandpaper and hit all my edges at this point in time before we go ahead and glue down the panel. So come around here and hit all the edges. And on the edge of this, okay, since you have a primer up here, go ahead and take your sandpaper at an angle, okay? At an angle. And what you're going to want to do is give it kind of an exposed edge, just a little bit of an exposed edge. And the reason for that is when we set this back up here, okay, it's all laid out, it's going to have a little bit of kind of a seam right here, right? So it's just going to kind of show a little bit of the primer that's on the underside of it. If we lay our sandpaper on the side and sand down on this panel and expose this edge, we'll do two things actually. One is we'll expose some raw wood on the edge, so it won't have that white backing that'll show through. And the other thing is it'll give it kind of a little bit more of a realistic look, that it's a little bit more worn and whatnot on the edge, not all nice and crisp and clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand this down and then go ahead and take care of some of these rough sides over here, some of this up on top. And we come back, we'll finally get to start gluing this guy down and it'll start looking more like a billboard. So now we're ready to go ahead and glue this guy down. So first off, make sure your surface is nice and clean. I went ahead and blew this off a little bit and wiped it so that you don't want any little chunks on there or anything else. If you do notice that there is some chunks in there from your primer, just go ahead and smooth it out with some sandpaper and just kind of get a nice smooth finish to it. So now, since we have that complete, I'm gonna go ahead and take some Mod Podge and I'm gonna add a generous coat to this side of it. And the one thing that we want to be weary of is we don't want to load up too much on the edge, but we do want some on the edge so we can have this thing stick down all the way through. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get this all applied. When we come back, we'll go ahead and set that down on it. So I went ahead and I have a nice even coat, and it's kind of it's not super heavy, but it's heavy enough. On the areas that we had seams, I just made sure that I sealed that up really good with the glue. I had a little bit of a crack up in this upper corner, made sure that that's nice and sealed. And the reason is this is giving us that extra little bit of protection when we do use our Danish oil on the back side for it not to penetrate through. So we take this and just kind of take your time and line it up. And get this guy all down in there. The nice thing with the glue, once we get it on there, we can move it around and manipulate it to where it looks good enough. Another good thing is make sure that your hands are clean and don't have any glue on them, because if you had glue and you come back over on the surface here, you're going to start putting smudge marks on your paper. So we don't want that. Now, once we get that on, we want to start working in trying to push out our air bubbles. So hey, we got a piece of balsa here. This will work. And anything as far as a type of push that you can use to get those air bubbles out. So big thing is just work it around, and it might turn out where you have a little bit of creasing and whatnot. Let's see here. And again, this is one of the reasons why we have multiple printouts too, just for this mere fact that if we messed up on one, we can always come back. Nice thing about this one is that we are going to be cutting holes in it, so it's not like if we were trying to make a perfect billboard. So a little bit of creasing here and there just means that's a good place to cut a hole in it when it comes time. So there we go. Work this around a little bit. Get it on the edges. And here we go. Starting to look like a billboard. So we'll go ahead and let this dry, we come back, we'll be flipping it back over and getting our supports down so it can stand up. All right, so we have our glue all dried on the face. Go ahead and turn it over. And the research that I've done on this sign, it was kind of interesting. They used the structure in the back had a 2x4s and whatnot and 4x4s, but their supports were actual logs. So I'm going to go ahead and use some round dowel and go ahead and figure out the angle and stuff that we want and the distance that we want it to set off the back. Now, you could go and do the equation to do that, or I'm going to show you a simpler way. And what we're going to do to start out with is find out exactly how far back we want it to sit. So I'm just going to grab a scrap. Actually, we'll take our ruler, okay? We'll put our ruler down here at the bottom, and we'll put it at 0 point on this side. Now, depending on where you want to put on your layout, it's going to depict on how much support, how far out you want to go. Their supports went out quite a ways. Obviously, it was a big sign. So if we figure out an angle, and the area that I'm going to put it at is kind of, I don't have a lot of room to work with. So what I'm going to do is run it at about 3 inches out, I think. Okay? So at 3 inches, what I'm going to do is cut off a piece of dowel at this 3-inch mark down here at the base. And that's where I'm going to start out at. So first off is I'm going to cut a dowel at 3 inches. So we'll do that. Then we'll go ahead and rough in our upper support. First thing I did is I went ahead and cut 4 of these dowels at 3 inches. And 4 of them because each one, we're going to have a support going on each one of these posts. Okay? So I got down for all 4. So we'll go ahead and set these guys off to the side. Another thing is after you get done cutting them that might be a little bit frayed on the edge, just go ahead and take a little bit of sandpaper and dress it up, just kind of smooth it all out. Now, the second portion of this, I'll grab a pin, as you notice I have it propped up, okay? So if we take our dowel, and let me get maneuvered here, and we go ahead and we have our one down here at the bottom. Now you notice on my table I have a straight edge. Now I've went ahead and made sure that this is sitting perpendicular and true. So we have our square, and we can go ahead and put that up so that it's sitting there where it's, you know, nice and true. Now if we take our dowel, that's moving around a little bit, but it's going to work okay for what we're trying to do. If we go ahead and set that on there, okay? So first off, go ahead and set this on. And it gives us a rough idea of how long that our post needs to be. And if we go off to the edge here, we can go ahead and take that dowel and then just go ahead and mark this angle down in there, okay? So now that we have that angle, it's showing the actual angle that it's going to sit on the ground. We'll go ahead and cut this off. We'll come back, we'll have that cut, and then we'll figure out what our angle is going to be at the top. Okay, so now that I have my angle cut down below, and we're back up here again, go ahead and take your dowel, raise this up just a little bit, and fit it right there. And you see how it's just right here on the edge, okay? Go ahead and double check your lower edge. Make sure that you're down where you want to be, okay? And everything's fit. Now come up here, take your pin again, and go ahead and figure that upper angle, okay? So We've got our upper and we have our lower. And you can see, you want to make sure that this lower isn't turned sideways or something and you put your angle up there. So it's real important that you have this guy sitting properly down here at the bottom of the table when you put that upper on there, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this angle, and then I have my template. And if we've done all this correct and everything is square and everything is even, we can go ahead and use this one dowel and make our 3 other dowels based off of this for our template. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut this. I've already cut my other dowels, and I'm gonna come back and just use this as my profile and fix up these other dowels. Okay, so now that I went ahead and cut all my dowel, what we need to do is start mounting this up. So we'll take our 3-inch piece, go ahead and get some super glue on it, and go ahead and I'm going to set it right down here on the end of that guy, okay? So we can get that set up there. Now, I'm going to take some, put in here, put a dab on the leading edge on that. And now we want to lay our support there, going right back into that. Make sure that we're pretty much square with our lower, which is kind of hard to do with only 2 arms. If we come off, come on. Looks like I just need to move it out just a little bit, but we've got that right up there to the top. We're gonna manipulate that out just a little bit. Come on. There. And there we go. So we'll just hold that into place and get that to dry. And then I'll go ahead and put the 3 others on. So when we come back, we'll have all our supports on, and then we'll just need to go ahead and put our cross supports on. Okay, so it stands by itself now. And there's our structure on the back. So there's gonna be a little bit of fine tuning down in here as far as sanding these down to get it so it's all leveled out. But that way of doing it is it's a pretty quick and easy way of getting it all squared up. Now we can go ahead and put in some cross braces. So from what I understood from the photos is that our upper supports this way were logs, and they had logs down here at the bottom, and it did look like they had a couple logs out here as well on that structure. But the side structure that went from the billboard to the posts was like a 2x8. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put in a few of these on each one, okay? So a good way of doing that is, since we already have kind of a grid set up on the back, is to find out exactly how high certain ones are here. And we have one right here at 4 inches, okay? So this guy at 4 inches right there, what we need to do is come out to that same area out here and come up to 4 inches. So that guy right there to that guy right there, okay? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy in, probably set this on its side, be the easiest. Let's find our 4-inch mark again, which was right in here, which is this guy. And we're gonna put that here. come up to the 4-inch mark right in here. So this guy, and either you can go ahead and put a line here and cut that out and place it, or kind of an easy way of doing it is you go ahead and you glue the one side in, okay? So you put super glue on that side, find out exactly where you want it at, put a little bit of super glue there, and just lay that guy down. Then hold it for a few minutes, and then take your blade and go ahead and slice down. So that's the technique that I'm going to go ahead and use. So what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to take a little bit of super glue, find our 4-inch one, which is that guy right here. Put a little bit of super glue on him. Put him right down in that area. Okay, hold him just a little bit. Now we're going to bring this up. Okay, and at this point, you get your square. Stay there. Get our square, set it right up here on the edge. Make sure it's nice and true, which it is. Okay, so our area is going to be right in behind here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this out a little bit, get a little bit of super glue right in that general vicinity. Set this guy down, make sure he's back true again, which he is, and go ahead and hold it. Let that sit for, I mean, it's already dry right there. So at that point, go ahead and take your X-Acto knife, or better yet, I think I'm going to use my hacksaw blade, and we're just going to go ahead and saw that through. There we go. And voila. Got ourselves a side support. So I'm going to go ahead and carry on with that same technique all the way through on different areas, wherever it seems like it's gonna look good. When we come back, I'll go ahead and take that doweling and put some doweling on the outside. So now I go and have my supports in. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and secure it down, because we're gonna be working on the back side and gluing our cross posts up for support. And I'm going to go ahead and do 4 of them. Do one here, here, and then up above. Okay, now grab your dowel, and if you notice, I went ahead and taped this down so that it's staying put, so I can go ahead and work on it and it's not tossing all over the place. So I'm going to go ahead and take this dowel, line it up. Okay, so we get it lined up exactly the way that we want it to be there. And I'm just going to go ahead and mark this on the edge. Okay, and go ahead and cut this off. When we come back, we'll go ahead and we're going to start notching these slightly with some sandpaper, and we'll glue it on. Alright, so I went ahead and got this guy cut and dressed it a little bit on the edges with some sandpaper. Now next thing we want to do is go ahead and line this up so that it's right there behind each one of those posts. And now let's go ahead and let's make some marks right here. Okay, and what these marks are going to be is that we're going to take some sandpaper and we're going to groove these out. So I have 80 grit sandpaper here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up. Oh, come on, let's roll. So I'm going to roll it up so I've got an edge to it, like so. Put the pin over there. These areas of the marks, make sure that they're all on the upper part that you're going to go ahead and sand, because you don't want to sand here and then next one sand over there. You want to make sure that they're all on top of each other. And let's go ahead and we'll sand these down. Okay, so just go ahead and hit this a little bit. You can see that notch. It's almost like we're building a log cabin. So there we go. There's one. And let me do this guy right here, and then we'll see how our fit is. A little bit more. So we got it here. Looks like you need to sand a little bit more, but you can see how it's gonna fit right in there. Okay, so you need to sand a little bit more on this guy right here. So just make sure that it's right there to there. And hit this. Alright, so I went ahead and I got it notched out. And if we line this up, it goes right into there, just like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take some super glue, trusty super glue, and just put a dab in each one of these. It's all super glued. So the big thing is to make sure that you line it up. Let's move this guy right there. And while you're holding it, get it all right based off of it. Like this guy's got to come over just a skosh. And we'll hold it. So once this gets all dry, we'll move on to the next one. Alrighty, so if we turn it around, there's all our structure. And you could add more if you wanted. You could put in cross braces and all sorts of different stuff back here. But at this point in time, I'm going to stop because I need to have access to cut my holes. So we can always come back in and put more structure in if we fill up to it. So the first thing that we need to do now is figure out whereabouts we want these guys sticking through. And if we go on the back side here, we can see where our open areas are at. So you'd go ahead and take your trusted knife here, and I'm gonna find an area right down through here in the corner. Also, this is the point of no return. So if you like the way your billboard looks before you start slicing it all up, by all means, you can go ahead and use it at that point. But if we're wanting to take some guys and stick some guys through there, you know, old guy needs to go through the billboard, you know, well, we're gonna have to kind of destroy it to make it work. So what we're gonna do is take this and we're just gonna start working our way down with it. And you can do it with a blade, or if you have a Dremel, you could go ahead and do it at a Dremel at this point in time. I'm gonna go ahead and show just what we can do with a blade to start out with. And big thing here is we don't want to ruin it too much. I mean, we're ruining it, but Let's not try to ruin it too much. So let's get this. Let's cut that guy off. And at this point, let's bring that and let's try to do a reverse type of bust on this thing. So let's get that. Let's see here. It came all the way off. So let's grab those scissors. Let's take these scissors and do that. And we can glue this back down in here. And you got to remember that these guys were kicking out panels, so it's gonna look rough. You take your sandpaper and you kind of hit it. And you got your opening. All right, so there's one opening. So just kind of go around, pick them wherever, and when we come back, we'll see how much we've destroyed it. Okay, so I've been hacking away at it, and we started out using a blade. Now you can do it with the blade, but it's much easier if you have a Dremel. Great tool. But all I'm doing pretty much is look on the back side, and you find out where your beams and stuff are at, and go ahead and start cutting down through. So once you get that established, find out where you want to go. And if there's a beam in that area, you don't want to cut down into the beam. So what we're trying to do is work our way around this beam. Okay, so we got it to that point. You can see we're through a little bit. And then start pushing it out. Because you got to remember, they kick these panels out, so we can get stuff to kind of hang down and look all nasty, the better, right? So it comes to this. We'll clean this up a little bit. Grind that up a little bit. Take our sandpaper and hit it. And there we go. Another ravished area. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't think I want to go too many more holes, because I still want to be able to see the general design of the billboard. So at this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and stop. I have some old guys here, just kind of give you an idea. So if you take even one of the guys that's the old sitting down pit stop type of guy, they fit right down in here. You can get them all hanging out. Obviously, it needs to be painted up, but you get the idea. So what I'm going to do now is pretty much leave it there. I think I might, on some of these corners, hit it lightly with some sandpaper just to kind of take away the sharpness of some of the areas. Make it look like it's a little bit more abused. Just kind of flip those back, and there we go. So we come back, let's go ahead and start putting on our Danish oil. Okay, so now we're ready for our Danish oil. And the reason why I'm using Danish oil is because on this thing on the back side, it wasn't painted or anything else. It was just old wood. So what I'm going to do is, you notice I have a rag and a brush, and pretty much I'm just going to put this on and then set that down and take a rag and just kind of drip it up, because we don't want it to drip down onto our other side. So it's just kind of a slow process here, and just kind of get it all the way around. And it comes to the edges, just kind of take your time with it. And go like that. On the face, these areas that are exposed, let's make sure we get this and give it some of that. Comes down here on the edges. We hit it just a little bit. We don't want to cover up that fresh wood as far as it being busted off, so we'll leave it at that. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep on varnishing the back side of this. When we're done, we'll see how it looks. Alrighty, so we got our Danish oil all put on there, and you can tell it just gives it that wood, that, you know, kind of old worn out look to it. So there we go. Now we'll just find a place for it on our layout. All right, so we made ourselves a Monza sign. Bob didn't say much again, but at least he's got a slot car on his shoulder, so that's a major plus. But let's go take a look at it on the layout and see how it looks. There it is. We need to get some different people for it. Turn workers don't exactly work that great. We need to get some wilder looking people that hanging off of it. But there we go. It's not going to be the final resting place for it. There's an area on the layout that I want to complete, and that's going to be one of those pieces down there. In fact, there's going to be kind of a couple videos here that we're going to put together that are going to have certain pieces that we're all going to come together in a final area on the layout. So if you like it, subscribe to my channel and share it with others. And as far as these little guys, I'm starting to build quite a bit of these. Still trying to think what I'm going to do with the one that I made. The other ones, there's been an interest, so I'm actually starting to produce these. And if you go over to my Facebook page, which is my name, Boone Howry, message me, and maybe we can get you guys an SO guy. So, all right, so thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next time.